everyone, welcome to this demo, an introduction to Adobe Photoshop. Adobe Bridge is where I'm at right now, which comes with Photoshop. I will go over Adobe Bridge later on. Right now, I'm not going to focus too much on Bridge. It will be really helpful to basically sort your images, put ratings, look through them, edit down to the best images when you have to choose from many images. So it becomes a really like a good supplement to Photoshop. And one of the cool things about Bridge is it will recognize the file type and it will open it in the software that pertains to that file type. So for example, if I open a JPEG, it will automatically open the image in Photoshop. Basically, you can think about it as a bridge. That's where the name comes from. It's a bridge between all the platforms that Adobe has to offer. So you can basically look at Illustrator files here, any type of media basically. And it works a lot better than looking at through your normal, viewer of the operating system that you have. This is a lot better. So I'm going to show you a little bit later how to use it. For now, I want to start talking about Photoshop and giving a little introduction of what Photoshop looks like. So I'm going to go ahead and here and open this image right here. I'm in Adobe Bridge. One of the things that you can do to open an image in Photoshop, if you're in Bridge, you basically double click the image and it will automatically open the image in Photoshop. So just by double clicking the image there, it just takes me right here to Photoshop. I will show you other ways of opening it. You can go to your file on the top of the screen. So it's right here above. So once you're in Photoshop, you go to File, then you go to Open, and you can navigate to where that file is in your computer. Okay. So that's another way of doing it. Sometimes if you don't have an image open, this will be the view that you get. Okay. When you open Photoshop for the first time, you might get this view. And you can basically click here where it says Open, and you can basically navigate again to your folder. Now, if you get here by any chance and you're wondering like, how do I get inside Photoshop? Because this is kind of like a home window. If you see this symbol on the top right here that says PS for Photoshop, if you click there, it will go here inside Photoshop. So this is how Photoshop looks, okay? If you want to go back to the home, you can actually click here on this home symbol, and then you go back out here. Now, this will become really useful, especially for those of you that are going to be using the cloud documents. I did a video for cloud documents. Hopefully, you were able to see it and found it useful. One of the things that you have here is basically the cloud documents. So if I go here and open a file, I can get to files that are in the cloud, and I can open them in Photoshop, edit them, and then save them into the cloud again. So that way you don't have the files directly saved inside your computer. So that's a really cool advantage of going to this home window and making sure that you're under cloud documents here. Okay. So that's one of the options. When you click here, you get your cloud documents. Okay. So anyway, let's go back to Adobe Bridge so I can open this image. So I showed you two ways of doing it, or basically three ways of doing it. Another way would be, I'm going to go to my file right here. If you have a folder that has the image, you can basically just drag this folder directly into, well, not the folder, sorry, my bad. I was talking about the image here. That was a trick question. All right, so you drag your image all the way down to your icon as Photoshop and let it go, and it will open the image in Photoshop. Okay, so that's a fourth way of doing it. Most of the time I actually do that one. I do like doing this a lot because I'm already navigating to my, through my folders, and I get to the image that I want to open. So I just drag it down into Photoshop and then it opens up. Another way that you can do it once you get here is if you right click in a Mac, you have to press Control and then click, and you have the option of opening with, and you can navigate to where Adobe Photoshop is. Okay. In a PC, it would be Control, but in this case, PC has already set up the right click on the mouse, so you can basically just right click it and you'll have the menu with open with. Okay. On a Mac, you have to set that up in your mouse. By default, it doesn't come like that. You don't have a right click, so you have to press Control and then click. If you want to learn how to change that in your mouse, I can show you how to do it. It's really easy. I actually have the right click on my mouse. I don't use the Control anymore. It just saves a little bit of time just by right clicking it and then going there. You don't have to press Control. Okay, so that's basically 4 ways of opening your files. You can either drag the file to the Photoshop icon in your dock or the bottom if you have a Mac. You can basically go here to File and then Open. Or if you have the image on Bridge, you can just double click it and it will automatically open in Photoshop. Okay, so what are we going to do with this image? So the first thing I want to talk about is about image size. This is really important because the image size will affect, depending on if you're going to print it, if you're going to put it on a website, or send it in social media, or sending an email. So you need to know what size you're working with, and also what's going to be the output. Where are you going to take this image at? The way that I work, I always keep my files big. And then once I finish retouching them and they're ready to go, then I keep that file as an original one, and then I save it as a different file format, or maybe a smaller file size for web and things like that. Okay, so you need to get in the habit of non-destructive editing. What that means is that you have a backup of your image as a negative, basically, in a way, like this big, that you can always resize it smaller, but you don't want to resize it smaller and then you can go back. Okay, so the idea here is that you always keep a big file, and that's where the folder structure that I gave you in the syllabus is really important. You always want to keep your PSD files, that are the Photoshop files, big files, and then if you want to resize those into a web format, then you go ahead and do that. Okay, so I'm going to start talking about how to resize your image, because let's say that you're going to give a picture to a friend and they want an 8x10. You're like, oh, how do I get it to an 8x10? So I'm going to start really basic. And to do that, you basically go to the top right here where it says image, and then it goes image size. As I go into Photoshop, I'm going to be doing shortcuts. So in the beginning, I'm going to show you where everything's at, but later on, I'm just going to do the shortcuts. Okay, so you have to follow along. I will, take note of where this is, because you're going to be using it a lot. The shortcut is Command Option I. In a PC would be Control Option and then I. Okay, so make sure, or in a PC will be Alt, sorry. So Alt is for the option. So make sure that you know which ones are the difference. That way you can get to it. So I'm going to click right here, and this window is going to come up. Okay, and this window is going to become your best friend because you need to know how to navigate through here. Okay, I'm going to walk you through the steps. So right now it's the original size. This right here is the dimension of the original file. So you can see it's like 6,000, by 4,096. And here right now is set up to pixels. Okay, so pixels, it works great when you're resizing images for web or something that it's going to be basically projected, or anything that is electronic, because that's how it works. If you're going to print, then it becomes, you have to make sure that you're aware of what inches, right, or what's the size on the print paper. So then in that case, you want to switch it to inches. Okay, so that's something that's really important that you're aware as soon as you open this window. Okay, make sure that you know that you're modifying the one that you want to be changing. And as you can see, if I change it to inches on this one, it changes on this one too, because right now they're linked. Because this image right here has a specific ratio, okay? And right now that ratio is locked, right? Because you want to make sure that you're not distorting the image and making it like stretch or compress or anything like that in a weird way. So that's what this little icon right here means. If I unlock that, okay, and I change this to, let's say 5, you can see that that number doesn't move, okay? Now, if I lock this and I change that to 5, you can see that this one does move because it's keeping the same ratio. Okay, so that's really important. Make sure that this is on. You definitely want that little chain symbol locked there. You don't want it like this, because if not, you're going to distort your image. So make sure that that's on. Make sure that you know what you're going to do for these two. If you're going to do it for web, then you need to change it to pixels. Okay, and then resolution is right here. So the first thing that I want you to do is learn how to resize for web files for turning in work for me. Okay, so we're going to actually do pixels for this one. And the pixels, okay, it's going to be always the longest side 1,000 pixels. Okay, 1,000. So I just thought about that number because it's an easy number to remember. I use sometimes for my own work, if I want it for web, like 1,500 or something like that. But because you guys are going to be turning in so much work, it gets the hard drives full really quickly. So I thought keeping it a low number that is round. So that's how I came up with 1000. Usually when you're submitting work for, let's say, contests or like portfolios and stuff like that, they will tell you how much pixels they want on the longest side. So right now I put here on the height 1000, but I realized, oh, you know what? It's actually the width, the longest one. So I'm going to go ahead and do that and do 1000. My suggestion is, as soon as you know that this is going to be for web, you want to make sure that you change the resolution first, okay? Every time we work with web files, the resolution or the standard size is 72, okay? So I'm going to write 72 so you can see what happens. Now, this is a common mistake that a lot of people do, so you need to take note of this. So please write this down. Make sure that you always change the resolution first when you're dealing with the pixels. The reason is, I had 1000 here. I don't know if you remember, I wrote around 1000. So when I changed to 72, it changed this to 206, okay? Because I changed the resolution. If I press OK, look how tiny my image is going to turn out to be. I don't want that, okay? So what we're going to do is, you're going to first decide, okay, I want pixels because it's going to be for the web, it's for an assignment for the class. You're going to change this to 72 first, and then decide, okay, so then the pixels is going to be 1000 on the longest side, which is the width, okay? If you do something by accident, or I don't know, you type something weird or wrong, if you hold the Option key, okay, in your keyboard, that will be Alt on a PC. So if you press that, you will see that this right here where it said cancel, it changes to reset, and I can reset the settings of the original file, okay? The problem is that this reset only works of what resetting whatever you change while you had the window open, right? If I change something, I click OK, and I try to reopen it to reset it, it won't work. It will reset to whatever settings you had when you open this window. Okay, but that's a really cool shortcut. I see a lot of people that they do something by accident and they click cancel and then they redo it, and it's like, no, you have an option to reset it if you hit Option right here and then you reset to the settings that you had at the beginning when you opened the window. Okay, so those are the steps, right? So remember, for web files for the class, we're going to do 72, and then the longest side, you're going to change it to 1000. Okay, so the 72 is basically how many pixels per inch is going to be in the image, you know? So that's what we basically get at the end of the file. Now, this is the important part. How many pixels? Basically, imagine that it basically comes out to be like how big it's going to be in your screen. So that would be 1000 pixels. So if I press OK, you'll see that it's still pretty small. Now, don't get scared if it gets about that size. You're just going to press Command 0, and it will fit the image of your screen. Or if you want to see the actual size, you can zoom out a little bit with Command minus, okay, or Command plus to zoom in, okay? So Command minus zooms out, Command plus zooms in. So I'm going to go back on the history. Whoop, let's do this one. And I go back to this so I can walk you through some other steps. Okay, so I was talking about this one, the width, right? The height we talk about, these are going to be attached, the resolution. Now resample has to be on, okay? If I uncheck resample, basically what that means is that you're going to keep the original pixel dimensions of your image regardless of what you write here. So even if I do that and I put 75 to, it's just going to change the resolution, but basically it's going to keep the same pixel count by when you multiply the width by the height. Okay, so basically it's not interpolating your image. Okay, so that's what resampling means. Now, most of the time, there are times that I actually want to do that, but that's rare. Most of the time you want that check mark. Okay, and then resampling, you have different options, and what that means is basically how does the algorithm or the math behind it of how is resizing your image to make it smaller or bigger. Usually in automatic these days, I feel like it's working pretty good, but if you want to go in here, you can basically decide if you're making it bigger and you know that you're making it bigger, you have the option of selecting this one, preserve detail enlargement, you know, be cubic smart, smoother for enlargement. This one is good if you're making enlargement, you want to basically smooth your image, and the opposite, if you're making it smaller, then you basically sharpen your image a little bit. That makes the illusion that the image looks better when you're stretching it to a big size or when you're making it smaller. Okay, So that what these means. The ones that I use the most is basically these two, the smoother if I'm making it something big, or the sharper if I'm reducing the file size. Okay. If you don't know which one you want, just leave it automatic. The software will actually identify if you're making it smaller or bigger, and will do those adjustments for you. I just started a long time ago and got in the habit of doing those. But if it's something that I don't care that much, I actually leave it in automatic. But if it's something that I'm going to print and I really care about, I definitely make sure that I pick the right one. Okay. So that's my take on that. People have different opinions about it, but that's just how I use it. That's basically the science of this. Now, if I'm going to change, let's say, an image to an 8 by 10, you do the same way, right? You make sure that then the resolution, how it's in your handout for printing, from now on, if you're going to print, it has to be 300 resolution, okay? So that's basically how many droplets per inch is going to be thrown at your printer. So that way you basically aren't able to tell. So you want to make sure that you have a good resolution. Sometimes I do use 240. Some people claim that, higher than 240 you don't really get to notice by the naked eye, like looking at it. And I think it's true. I actually have done some tests where I look at different prints, and the reality is at least I can tell. There might be people with supervision that they might be able to tell, but for standard sakes, most printing magazines and things like that, they always have 300. So I actually do 300 for all my work just because it's become a standard. So the standards is 72 for web and 300 for printing. Now, those standards get broken. Like if you're doing a poster that's big, some people even do smaller resolution. That's just the rule of thumb. But there are moments that you can change that. But for this class, that's what we're going to learn. For web, it's going to be 72. And for printing, it's going to be 300. Okay. So the same would be for printing. If you're printing an 8 by 10, right, and you want to put like the height to be 10, then you do 10. Oh, that's 15, so I have to do the longest side. So you will notice that the ratio is not the same by 8 by 10. So you do have to crop it beforehand so you can change it here to the dimensions that you want. Okay, so that's basically the image size. So one thing you realize is that you're basically tied to whatever ratio your image had. So if that's the case, then you have to crop it. Okay, so I'm gonna click cancel here or reset it. Let's see. Yep. And I'm gonna do 72. And I'm gonna put 1000 pixels. Okay, so that's gonna be your first image that you're gonna turn in for your lab. Is make sure that is 1000 pixels. So I know that you know how to resize it for web. Okay, so that's the first one. So that's one file. Then the other one that you're gonna do is, I'm gonna undo this. I want to make sure that you know how to crop your image. Okay, so to crop your image, you're going to go here to this tool. That is the crop tool. The shortcut is C for crop tool. Okay, so you select it right there. And then the ratio, if you want to do an 8 by 10, I actually not going to do an 8 by 10 because I want you guys to turn in something smaller. So let's do a 4 by 6. Let's see what that gives us. Now I put 4 by 6, okay, automatically gave me the ratio here of what is a 4 by 6. But if you notice, it's giving me the vertical, ratio of that. And I don't want that. I want the opposite. I want a horizontal or landscape image. A really quick, easy trick is if you click here, if you type it wrong, just click this little arrow and it will flip it for you. And then it will be 6 by 4. And then it fits the ratio of the image. Okay, so that's the other size I want you to turn in. So once you resize that to 6 by 4, you can basically click this icon right here that looks like a check mark, or you can hit return on your keyboard, or you can double click here. That's one thing you're going to learn about Photoshop. There's like 10 different ways of doing it. I might be teaching you guys how to do something and you'd be like, oh, I watched a video once that is showed a different way. That's okay. Okay, there's different ways of doing tons of stuff here in Photoshop. I'm just going to show you a couple of ways so that way you pick the one that works for you. I don't really mind which one you use as long as you know how to do it. Okay, so the check mark right here is one option. You can hit return on your keyboard, or you can just double click inside and it will basically approve that crop. Now, one thing you will notice is nothing really happened, right? Because it was the same ratio. That's okay. The reason I had you do that is just so you know how to crop it. And I'm okay if when you do the crop, I just press C to get the crop. You can also like crop it in, let's say something like that, and create a different composition and move it down and then approve it. Okay, so now I changed like how the image was cropped, which is really nice. Now that I did that, I can go to image size. Let me make sure that I cropped it correctly. I don't want to do something by accident. Okay, let's just leave it like that. I'm going to go to image size. I told you the shortcut is Command Option I. In a PC will be Control Alt I. And once you get here, now I can put on the width 6:4 and it will be that ratio because I make sure I cropped it. And then you can put 300 for print. Okay, so that's the other one that you're going to turn in. The longest size 6:4, so 300. So this is basically how you would save if you're going to go to a print shop, or even like a drugstore or something like that, where you're going to print your pictures. Basically, you save your file already resized to that size, and it will make the image come out better. Okay, so that's basically the other one that you're going to save. Now you're asking me, so how do I save this, right? I didn't show you that. So very easy. You're going to go like other softwares. You're going to go to File, and you're going to go Save As. Okay, get in the habit of saving as. There's very rare occasions where I do save, unless I'm opening a file that I'm already working in, and then I didn't quite finish, so I just save it on top. But most of the time, once you're working in Photoshop, after you do the changes that you wanted, you just want to save it as a different file, basically. Okay, so you're going to go to File, Save As. And once you go to the folder, remember the naming convention is first name underscore last name. I think that's what I gave you. Now I forgot if it was last name underscore. Just verify that for me. I don't want to get you guys confused. And then this will be lab. I'll usually have week, the week number, like week 2, for example. And then underscore 001, because we're going to have multiple labs. I was going to put lab, but I think it's easier to remember what week number it was. So first name underscore last name underscore week 2 001. Sometimes I actually tell my students to put lab underscore, but I feel like it's too long. So I think if you put week 2, I know that will be a lab. So let's just stick with that, a little bit shorter and cleaner. Okay, first name, last name, week 2, and then 001. If you have another one, right, because you're going to do the web one and then the print one, then you're going to do 002 at the end. Okay, .jpg. Okay, so that's how you're going to save it. And you're going to save it, in a location that you can find it. And this is after you did the changes. So you first do the first one, right, of the image size for web. And you're going to go to File, right, Save As, and then save it. Now, the problem is that after you do that, you have to go back so then you can resave it. So basically, you have to undo what you did. And you undo that by pressing Command Z. Or you can open this window right here and go back to the beginning where it says open, or you can click on this one right here. If you don't see this window that says history, you're going to go to window and make sure that history has a check mark. And then you'll see this window right here. Okay. So that's basically going to be your best friend, because sometimes, we're learning, so we'll do mistakes. So you have to make sure that you know how to go back. Okay. Now that has a limitation. It doesn't go forever. Okay. So it's like 20 steps depending on the settings that you have. So it will have a limit. So if you start editing an image and you're there for an hour doing stuff, you can't go back to like their second step. It will run out. So in this case, it works fine because we're not doing that much work. So you can go back to the beginning. So the reason I'm showing you this is because you're going to start, right, resizing your image. And then after you resize it, you have to go back to the beginning, right? Because you have to make it big again so they can resize it to the 4:6. Okay. So then you will have to go again to image size or crop it. And then after you do that, then you go File, Save As. So you will end up with 2 files that are different, right? In the name and also in size. And that's what I'm going to be verifying. Make sure that you guys know how to do that. Okay. Are you with me so far? Yeah. Okay, I'm going to walk you through some of the windows in a little bit of everything that's in Photoshop, but I want to start diving into like the basics, like how do you resize your picture? Later on, I'm going to basically walk through all the little tools, windows, and everything. Okay, but I want you to start diving in. It's like when you go swimming, right? You first jump in the water and get wet, and then you start swimming. So right now, we're just diving in quickly to get our heads a little bit wet. So now that I have this right here, I'm going to show you a different lab. I'm going to close this one. And to close it, I press Command W. Okay, or you can go File and then Close File. So I'm going to not save it because I don't need to do that. So let's go back to here to Bridge. I'm going to show you a different thing here when you open a file is to crop it, but also straighten your image. Okay, so now this is an image that I basically shot a little bit crooked on purpose. So I can show you guys how to do this. And what we're going to do is the same tool. We're just diving in a little bit, right? So we're going to select the crop tool. And once you select the crop tool, doesn't matter what tool you have, and I'm going to emphasize this later, you always have a toolbar on the top that has options. Right now, I want you to look at this one right here, this little tool right here, and you're going to click there, and you're going to click on the horizon line and drag it out. I'm not letting go my mouse. I basically clicked and I dragged it out and drag it across the horizon line. Basically, you have to follow that line. I'm not letting it go yet. And when I get to the end, then I let it go. And basically, you told the computer, this line right here is the horizon. And you're telling the computer that has to be straight. And what it's going to do for you is going to basically straighten it up. So if I now approve this here, basically now it made my horizon straight. It cropped the image for me and rotated it for me too before cropping it. Okay, so that's a really useful tool. I'm going to go back if you missed that. Again, I selected my crop tool. Okay, I went right here where it says straighten. It looks like a little level, the bubble thing that comes in the levels. And you click on the horizon without letting it go. Oh, I was cropping it. I did the wrong thing. I unselected this. It was already selected. I click and I drag it out, and you follow the horizon line. Obviously, the horizon line is a little bit like curved because of the distortion of the lens. But what you want to do is start on the one point and then go to the other one and then let go. And it will straighten it out for you. Now it's straight. Now you just approve that. Now, this tool also works for buildings. For example, if you shot a building and it's a little bit crooked, so it works with vertical lines as well. Okay, so it doesn't just does horizontal, you can just do it vertical, and the same way it will fix it for you. Whatever is closest to when you do the line, that's the one that it will think that you want to do. Okay, so just keep that in mind. One thing I want to show that when you're using the crop tool, all right, we talked about the ratio here, and you have also options of different ratios that you can do right here. But one thing that you will see right here, there's a check mark that says delete crop pixels. That is an option that I actually have it on all the time. But if you're afraid of cropping an image and then regretting it, you can actually uncheck that. So let me show you what will happen if I uncheck that. If I uncheck this and I crop my image and I do the same thing that I did, I go right here around the horizon and I stretch it and it's right there and I approve it. Okay. And I start working, and doing other stuff. If I select my crop tool, I can actually go back, you see, and the image is still there. It's just hiding. Okay, so you can always recrop it or change it to where it was originally. So that is something, if you're afraid of cropping an image and you think you will regret it, having that on check is really helpful. For me, I have it off because I rarely crop my images too much. So I usually, when I crop it, I know I definitely want it that way. But I just want to point out that basically that's a great option for non-destructive cropping, okay, when you do crops in your images. So just keep that in mind. That might be something helpful that you can do later on. So for this image, the only thing I want you to do is straighten that horizon, and then you can go File. And before you go to File, you need to do what? Every time that you turn in a lab, you're going to resize it to, again, same setting. Resolution. Make sure that you're in pixels first because it's for web. Resolution first, 72, and then the width, 1000. So you need to write that down and put in a post-it next to your monitor. That's going to be the size to turn in lab from now on. Okay, so save that. And so you do that and you save it. And then you go to File, Save As, and then naming convention, right? And that will be 003, okay, because you did the other two already. So that's what you're going to do for these two. I hope that was helpful. I will have another lab for you guys to do, and I will emphasize a little bit more on the different panels and things like that we have to offer. Okay. Hope they enjoy that, and I'll see you in a little bit.